There's a man named Bob who got a promotion as a vice president of the company that he worked for. And Bob just sort of let it go to his head, and he would go around just telling everybody everywhere about this big promotion that he had just gotten. His wife just kind of frustrated and embarrassed by this, so finally she's like, "Look, Bob, it's not a big deal. Like, everyone's a vice president today. Like, they have a vice president of peas down at the supermarket." Bob was a little deflated, so he called up the supermarket to see if this was true. So he gets on the phone. This is kind of what a phone used to look like. "Can I speak to the vice president of peas, please?" "Fresh or frozen?" Yeah, humility. Humility is an interesting thing. Humility is called the queen of all the virtues. And humility is necessary for the spiritual life. Humility can be a tricky thing because, one, we're not supposed to know that we have it. If we go around and say, "Yeah, I'm humble," it's a sure sign that we maybe have some more work to do. So it's tricky because we're supposed to be full of it, but not know that we're full of it. Or else, never mind. So it's just one of those things that we're always going to be kind of wrestling with our whole life. Humility can be a tricky thing too because sometimes we think maybe humility is like putting ourselves down. It's not thinking less of ourselves, but thinking of ourselves less. Kind of a self-forgetfulness. It's just sort of taking ourselves kind of out of the equation in some ways and just not worrying about it so much, just holding ourselves a little more lightly. We know, and perhaps we've encountered people who, are a little prideful, maybe a little haughty, and that kind of rubs us the wrong way, but the opposite is also not supposed to be true. We're not going to go around thinking that we're just like God's greatest gift to humanity. We're also not the worst person in the world either. So that's not the goal of humility, because both are an inordinate focus on ourself. And so this humility is this self-forgetfulness, just thinking of ourselves less and just being rooted ultimately in what is real. Humility is just about acknowledging truth and living in it. The good things, the bad things, sort of all of it. Actually, the word for humanity and the word for humility have the same root. It's from a word meaning like the soil. We can even see that in the word hummus, right, which kind of looks like sandy soil, although it tastes delicious when it's made right. Sabra. It's being grounded. It's that willingness to just be grounded. But it's that being grounded that enables us to grow in the way that the Lord has in store for us, to be that best version of ourselves, to have that peace and the contentment and the joy that we all really want. Because the opposite of humility is pride. And that goes back to Adam and Eve. That's the original sin, right? They're like, "No, I'm just going to grab for myself and forget about God and whatever else." Of course, the bad thing for us is that we're all born into that. So we all have that sort of innate temptation to that self-seeking pride, which is why we need that grace of God to help us to step more into humility, and to be grounded, in the reality of who we are, who God is, and how it all fits together, who other people are. And I think that can bring us so much freedom. To be humble brings us so much freedom. We're certainly free then to look towards the good of others. I like how in our first reading at the very end it talks about almsgiving, right? Giving to those who are in need. That's an act of humility, to recognize the need for that. As Jesus would I guess, say in his parable, to not do that, sort of expect something in return, just it's its own good. I think being grounded in humility, it gives us the freedom to acknowledge a job well done, but also to know that we've been blessed in so many ways in order to make that happen. Humility gives us the freedom to be able to receive comments or receive compliments graciously, which I know some of us have a big problem with. It's really not humble to bat off compliments. I've tried. All you're supposed to say is thank you and move on. But then it also allows us to treat others graciously as well. I think the groundedness of humility helps us to make mistakes without like our world coming crashing down, and just as an opportunity to learn from that. It helps us to bear wrongs patiently. It helps us to ultimately be able to open ourselves up truly to God, approaching the Lord with open hands as like a beggar, knowing that everything indeed comes from him as a gift. I heard it said once years ago, and this line really, really stuck with me. It's the only thing we can claim for ourselves is our sinfulness. Everything else is grace. Everything else is a gift from God. And being grounded in that, again, is what I think what gives us so much healing and peace and joy in our life, rather than just kind of trying to reach for ourselves. Being grounded gives us that freedom from an unhealthy spirit of comparison, from being too caught up in trying to get attention or admiration or whatever else we think maybe will fit that spot deep down. It's our blessed relationship with the God of the universe that makes us who we are and gives us the value that we have to be able to walk through life more freely. I love the second reading that we have for today. We've been kind of walking through the end of the letter to the Hebrews, but I think it fits well because as we hear, he's talking about this heavenly vision, right? Where it's the heavenly Jerusalem with all the angels and the saints all there in a feast around the Lord Jesus, crucified and risen. And it's a vision of heaven and the heavenly liturgy. And that's what we get a taste of here every time that we're at Mass. Because when we're at Mass, heaven and earth smash together. And so we're brought up into that realm. And so as we encounter Christ here in the Mass today, let us be reawakened to the depths of his love for us, the fact that every good thing really comes from him, and we live our life in thanks and praise for all those gifts. And to be able to say, as St. Ignatius of Loyola prayed, Lord, give me only your love and your grace, and that is enough for me.